Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for investing your time with me today. My job today is going to be challenging you, challenging paradigms, challenging your comfort zones, and helping you get a greater awareness of what success is in business and in franchising. I'll be going through a number of different perspectives. The way I typically run my seminars, I would rather you ask the questions as we go along. We will have time for Q&A as we go. But I've been doing this for November 4th will be 25 years in franchising. So I've been a franchisor. I'll actually probably just take the next slide. So why am I qualified to stand here and share this perspective with you? I've been running FranNet for 14 years. I'm consistently one of the top offices in North America. I'm on the board of directors for the Canadian Franchise Association. I'm in my third term right now. I also, with iFranchise Group, I do help companies become franchisors, but not under FranNet. That's a different company. iFranchise Group is one of the top 3 companies in the world on helping companies become franchising, and I run their Canadian operation. I'm also a franchisor with Alaire Homes. We're franchising construction management. President of Canadian Franchise Association, Lorraine McLaughlin, she calls me tripolar. So, because I wear a bunch of different hats. So it really depends on, and I'm going to talk about that today, the importance of focus. Because that's what, as soon as you get into multiple businesses, there's a focus challenge. So my previous life, my first round in franchising, November 4th, 1991, went 25 years on November 4th. I was a franchisor. We had 110 offices in Canada, sales, management, leadership training, customer service, business coaching. I was a business coach for 12 years. So I refer to a 360-degree perspective on all the different things you want to consider in business ownership. It's because I've been at every side of the table. I've been in the bank financing it. I've been helping businesses succeed. I've seen what causes business failure. One of the master franchises I bought failed. It cost me several $100,000. So I've also had that bruising, if you will, of not doing things right. So with all that perspective, I look at there's 3 things that you really need to know before you buy a franchise. Number 1 is understand yourself. And again, I'm going to be really driving this today. It's, well, yeah, understand, that's pretty obvious, but really understand, what do you bring to the table? What are your skills? What are your interests? Where are your passion connects? What are your passion disconnects? What are your financial resources? What are your time resources? You know, I want to buy a business, but I don't have a lot of time to run it. Well, a lot of risk in that, right? So these are all different things. Understand the business model you want to buy. And I said before, just because you buy a business or other people have bought a business, it doesn't mean that it's the right one for you. I would love to have the cash flow of a Tim Hortons franchise. I would hate to run one. And it's because of the type of work. It's really complex. I like working with small groups with senior thought leaders. So that's, what is it that you bring to the table? Make sure the business can take you where you want to go. This is what I'm talking about the dream, right? It's where do you want to go? A business is a vehicle, nothing more, nothing less, to get you from point A, where we are right now in time, to point B. But we got to enjoy the ride along the way as well. So I'll be talking to that. So the same rules apply for job search. See, a job is also a vehicle. And you want to make sure there's alignment in the job. There's surveys out there about how unhappy we are in the corporate world. I'll be touching on one of those today. So the other thing I will say is business ownership is not right for everybody. And it's really, you want to be honest with yourself as you get through the research. Is this the right place for you? So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm going to make you uncomfortable. I hope I'm going to make you uncomfortable today. My job is to help people get uncomfortable, then guide the research to the point to get comfortable enough. So you are going to get uncomfortable, but when you buy, you've done enough research, you have enough understanding, enough confidence in the business, in the franchisor, in yourself, in the people you're going to hire to be able to create an effective business. Jack Welch, I'm going to bastardize what he said. This is Jack Welch, the former head of GM. People who can't make decisions with 75% of the information get in the way of those who can't. Now, that's an extreme, and I don't subscribe to that particular perspective. You really want to get a lot of information, but you're never going to have 100%. Pursue franchise ownership further. As I said, I'm going to be challenging you. Just because there's lots of success in franchising, there's also a fair amount of failure. Self-employment is not meant for everybody, so you really, really want to assess, is it the right time for you? Is franchise ownership worth it? Financially, lifestyle, all those different components. Why business ownership can be attractive? We all go into business ownership for different reasons. But being aligned with those reasons for yourselves, each of you is going to be different. Is it aligned with your values? Is it aligned with your resources? These are things you want to consider. What are the roadblocks? I'm going to be spending a lot of time on roadblocks because there are roadblocks in the market. We create our own roadblocks, either by accident or subconsciously. I'm going to look at what the difference briefly. You can buy a franchise, you can start a business from scratch, or you can buy an existing business. Those are typically the way people go into business. So I'm going to be walking through some of those. And then really simplifying your search and getting help. And to me, that's where the main element is. Whether you use our services or whether you do this on your own, I want to, by the end of today, you should really have a good understanding of what it takes to properly research a business. But it starts with you. There's lots of good business out there. I'm going to be hammering this point home today. There's lots of good businesses out there. Just because it's good for somebody else, it doesn't mean it's good for you. A little bit about FranNet. We are 60 offices, over 60 offices in North America. We are one of the premier franchise consulting firms on the continent. When I say franchise consulting firms, we don't help, under FranNet, companies become franchisors. All we do is help people find the right business for themselves. So that's all we do. We've literally assisted thousands of people in business ownership. I myself and my partner have helped over 600 people buy businesses over the last 14 years. And my office is in Toronto. I cover Burlington all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean. I have a franchise. It's a franchise to help people find a franchise. It's a really cool business. I like to think of it as this way. I get to help people change their lives. And sometimes buying the business isn't the change of life. Realizing that I shouldn't buy a business and what else can I do that's just as important. So what are we not? We are not franchise vendors. I'm not here at any time. I'm not here to sell franchises. I'm here to help people figure out their businesses, introduce them to options, and coach them through the research. You're the one who has to sell yourself. It's worth doing or it's not worth doing. We're not dream dealers. I can't create your dream. If you don't have a dream about business ownership and you don't have clarity on your dream, coming to me isn't going to fix that. What I can do is we can look at what are the aspects of the dream that you want, how do you get clarity on it, what are the things that you need to do to drive that, to realize it. See, the dream of ownership, it gets a lot of people attracted. There's a certain romance about being an entrepreneur, isn't there? But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of challenge that goes into that. So you don't want to get seduced by the opportunity. And I'm going to come back and anchor that later on. We're not a bill collector. What I mean by that, as I referred to the feedback sheet, people who give us their contact information and are sincerely interested in working with, we will follow up with, but we're not going to chase. If we have to chase you now, and think about this if you go into business, any customer that you have to constantly chase, not a very ideal customer. So you want to figure out, is this something I want to use? Then we will work with the people who really want to engage. Entrepreneurial seizure is you know, I want to be in business for myself. There's a really, really good book, a really important book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. One of the most important books you can read as a would-be entrepreneur and as an entrepreneur. Talks about working on the business and working in the business. And he references the entrepreneurial seizure. I want to be in business for myself. Now I know what I don't know. You go on the internet, you go to the franchise shows, you go wherever, and you type in the word franchising or buy a franchise, look for a franchise. Guess what comes up? Hundreds and hundreds of ads and information. And it's not the companies who are best, it's the companies who invest the most in marketing. 1,200 franchises in Canada right now. Pardon me? 1,200. In the US, 6,000. There's a lot of options out there. Now, just because it's franchise doesn't mean it's good. It means it's been duplicated, and I'll talk to that. But now you see something. Now I know what I don't know. I'm interested. Then we get to the conscious competent. I know what I know. Well, folks, the difference between conscious incompetent and conscious competent is 3 months of research, 10 to 15 hours a week of active research. This is getting your clarity. This is getting understanding of the business. This is understanding the market, who the customers are, so that you get to the point of I know what I know. Not I think it's the right business for me. I know it. If you're at I think it's a good business, it's not enough. Your job as you go through research, I know this is the right business for me. Here's why, and here's how I'm going to accomplish it. Lots of people get to the here's why, and then they don't figure out the here's how before they buy. And then they buy and they're struggling. See, if you're figuring out the here's how as you're in your research, and once you buy and you execute, it's going to be a much smoother execution, isn't it? The last one is the subconscious competent. I don't know what I know. In other words, the expert. There's no way in 3 months, 4 months of research that you're going to be able to get to an expert. So the subconscious competent, you absolutely want to talk to those people. Those are the existing franchisees who have been running the business for 5 years and have done a good job of it. You're going to want their perspectives. What does it take to get going? What does it take to find the ideal customer? What are the mistakes you made that you want to avoid, that I should avoid? What were the most important things that you would do differently if you had to do it over again? These are all really, really important questions. So you want to go through that. So let's talk about risk. Risk is always present in business ownership, but it's really understanding what degree of risk that you are comfortable with, and you shouldn't go too far out of that comfort zone. So when I ask this question, what industries would you bet your career on these days? What are some answers that you would have? Banking? Finance, okay. Technology? Real estate? Okay. And what was that last one?
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Healthcare, number one answer I get more than anything else. Technology is the second thing I get. But I've hardly ever heard banking, so that's interesting. Let me talk about technology for a second. Technology, we are absolutely in a technology world. But technology is changing every 6 to 18 months. So people who are there are constantly learning. Typically, there's not a lot of businesses though we'd bet our career on, are there? Because there's so much change in the corporate market. So we look at going to work for someone else is safe while you're there. We are now in a gig economy. We know you can't be sure the job will be next year. Excellent performance. I've had clients who have generated 7-figure profits for companies, and then the next year the company gets bought by a US company, the jobs go south, and they're, what, out of work. So there's no guarantee. Can you ease off once you're established? Imagine this, fourth quarter, you just ground yourself, you barely made the goals, but end of fourth quarter, I did it, I got that goal. Imagine going to your boss on January 2nd saying, hey boss, I worked really hard last quarter, I'm going to take it easy for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Not going to happen. In business ownership, you set your pace. So that's one of the things now, not right out of the gates, but once you get established, you set the level of engagement, and the outcomes are related to that level of engagement. Long-term financial goals and career, what are your career and your retirement goals? This is one of the areas I'm going to make you uncomfortable today. I'm going to come back to that later on because I think there's an elephant in the room that people aren't talking about. I call it out. So we know that the longer you have a job, the more risky it becomes. 5-7 years ago, I would have put these slides up, I would have been laughed out of the room. But a lot has changed in corporate. So we say that the longer that you have the job, I have a client right now who works for a large automotive manufacturing company. And he's been there 14 years, senior engineer, and he's getting nervous because all of a sudden his salary is up at the peak and he's really expensive for that company. So his wife is looking for a job or a business now so that she gets it started 2-3 years later, he can look at if there's a problem over here, he's got someplace to slide to. But there's more competition. The higher you go, the longer you go. We're flattened organizations in corporate sector. So these are all the different things but there's no employment, there's no equity in corporate employment. And what do I mean by that? Unless you've been with a company for a lot of years and you get packaged out, downsized, whatever you want to call it, that's the only time you're going to get equity. You're going to get you should get a large package. Packages are typically, the law is 1 week for every year of employment. The average is 3 to 4 weeks for every year of employment. We're seeing that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was 4 to 6 weeks for every year. So it's getting thinner. But once you get that first package, now you're going into a cycle of shorter term jobs, and it's going to be, if you're with the company for 3 years, you're only going to get a 3-month package. Well, a couple of slides from now, I'm going to talk about what the pattern is for how long you get jobs. This is what we were raised on. When I was 19, I got a job with TD Bank. My grandfather said, "Way to go, work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, you're set for life." Well, 7.5 years later, I had really good success in the bank. I was a turnaround specialist for underperforming branchlets, but I didn't like the box that the bank was. Gary I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I wanted more freedom and flexibility. But that's what we grew up on, was we thought, get a job and we have a long-term career. Well, that's changed. It doesn't exist, but I shouldn't say that. In government jobs, public sector jobs, this still exists. Some union environments, this still exists, but it's a lot less of a pattern.
So is that years?
Yeah. So the question is this years? So I've put age 45 as here. This represents the squiggly line as we've gone through our career. So this is what we see now. I use the age 45, but I have clients in their mid-30s, folks, that are experiencing this now. I get laid off, downsized, whatever. I take a 1-year or 2-year contract, another block, another job, another, and the pattern repeats. Now you'll notice a couple of things. You'll notice the green bars, that's where you're earning money, get lower, and the red bars get fatter. Well, the reality is, this is what's happening. The average time that people are employed these days is 1.7 to 2.5 years. 4 years ago, it was 2.7 to 3.5 years. We are seeing a shift to lower jobs. Average time in between jobs is 1 month for every $10,000 of annual income, unless you're a strong employee or you've got a specialty skill. But we see people in their mid-40s, 12 and 18 months in between jobs. Think about the impact of that. Think about, if I'm not earning money, I'm probably eroding my savings somehow. My long-term retirement component it's a lot harder. We're living longer. We're not living into our late 60s. We're living into our 80s. So, or sometimes even longer. So we have to have a much more robust retirement. And the old corporate mechanism of work hard, work smart, save, live through your corporate job, but put a certain amount away, this pattern makes it hard. I maintain that self-employment, when done right, is one strategy, but it's not the only strategy. It is a good strategy, but like I said, not everybody's right for self-employment. The big red bar over there, once the age 65, I have a lot. I just yesterday I had a client, 64 years old, bought a franchise for business consulting. He's been in business all his life. He's been working with the community all his life. Gary, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't want to sit there and just sit around the home. I want to stay intellectually engaged. So he's got a small business that he chooses the number of clients he wants, he chooses the frequency he wants, and he's got enough lifestyle balance and intellectual engagement, and he wants to go for at least 10 more years. Now imagine going to an employer and asking for that type of role. Probably not going to happen. So whether you're in your mid-40s or you're into your 30s, you're likely in that cycle. So you really want to think about that. I maintain, I call it the corporate ladder is broken. So we look at the jobs have been offshored, organizations are flatter. These are all the different things I'm just talking about. A big one, short-term financial factors drive senior decision making. What do we cut when a new CEO comes in or CIO? What do? Let's cut jobs. The immediate path to better results is jobs. But what goes with jobs? Legacy, intellectual horsepower. So what's left, we've got an eroded resources for the people. So I call it the do more with less for less syndrome. You've got to do more because the same work is there. We just have less people to do it. We have less team resources. We have less financial resources. We have less time resources because we've got so much. But we have more responsibility. And guess what? They want to pay us the same. Oh, we just cut our team by 6 people and you've got 4 more accounts. Oh, don't worry about the extra hours you've got to work. And we're not going to increase your salary for that. Anybody experience that? Well, that's the other part, yeah. We're Canadian, right? Be thankful you have a job. We're not going to say anything because we don't want to rock the boat. We are in a very, very interesting stage where Canadians are more unhappy in their work than we've ever seen, which I'm going to talk to. RBC, Royal Bank, just had a survey out October 3rd. I'll talk about that. So if you knew you could be a successful business owner, who here would choose to work for somebody else? Most people wouldn't. Why do so many people not go into business then? 95% of people don't go into business. Risk. It always comes back to risk. Risk is always going to be a factor. Businesses cost money to start. I would say, folks, that statement is inherently incorrect on purpose. See, when a business is researched well and you launch it well, it is not a cost. There will always be costs associated with launching a business. But a business, you should look at a business as a transfer of investment from one asset pool to another. The asset pool that you're buying, that you're going to run and be actively involved in, you've got a lot more control. So it's a transfer of investment. I love this one, paycheck addiction. It's the only addiction there's no real cure for, no treatment for. But you saw from that last slide that the environment is forcing it. So we've gone into that gig economy, and I have clients who, Gary, I really like that secure income. I like that paycheck coming in. Okay, let me get this right. You're going to look for 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months to get a job, and you're going to have 12 months, maybe 18 months in that job. So if we take a 2-year picture, you're employed 2/3 maybe of the time. I actually have a spreadsheet. It's a 12-year income comparison that is on my website that you can look at and plug in the difference. And it's amazing. When you say it differently, it's when you take the employment, stay in employment in that cycle, it averages out to a 30 to 35% decrease in pay, netted out at the end of the time. So you have to look at that. Now one of the other things, running a business takes talent and skill. I have people saying, I don't have any business experience. I shouldn't be, I don't know how to run a business. Well, most people when they buy a business or launch a business, it's their first time. You buy a franchise, it's a lot less risky. 50% of businesses when you start from scratch fail. Less than 20% of franchises fail. So it's what is the business, the talent and skill you bring to the table, and look in that zone. Or what does the franchisor systems and processes do to broaden your skill base so that you can run a business? So it's looking at what is the skills that you bring to the table, what is it that you like to do, what is it you want to avoid? I'll talk to that. But here's the big one, fear of failure. That's what stops most people. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of financial pain, however you want to call it. All these things, these are holding people back. What are the things that you look at? Our Royal Bank survey, 79% of the respondents in this survey said, I think having my own business is less risky than having a job. I've never seen that before, folks. These are brand new. We used to see, I see lots of people unhappy. 92% they would rather start a business and have the control over their careers. When I did this seminar, last time I videotaped it, 2010, these numbers were like 60%. So we've seen a huge shift in the last 5 years. 92% said they want to be their own boss. Want to be. Part of the reason why you're all here today is, does it make sense I should consider this path now? There's still going to be a disproportionate number of Canadians who are going to stay in jobs, and that's appropriate because you don't want to buy a business and with everything you have just to get in. There's even more risk with that, because if you're undercapitalized, you're gonna run into some challenges. So I maintain self-employment, when done right, is one of the best ways to solve this vicious cycle I'm talking about. So the options: start from scratch. I maintain starting from scratch. I have an idea. Some people, yeah, I've got a really good idea. Let me go out and do it. And if you've got a good idea, you've got the resources and the team and the different people around you to do that, then you should go out and explore that. Or there's business incubation centers and things like that. But I maintain buying a business or launching a business from scratch is like building a boat while you're in the water. You don't know how deep the water is. You don't know how cold it is. You don't know if there's a current. See, the water is the marketplace. And there are currents, good and bad, in the marketplace. And you can get in a good current and not be prepared for it. It can still be dangerous. So there's a lot of things you don't know. 50% of businesses that start from scratch fail after 5 years. Buying a franchise business, I'm going to talk about that a lot, so I'm going to skip over that for now. And you can buy an existing franchise or an existing independent business. So the existing business, a lot of people say, hey, I want to buy something that's proven. And if it's an existing business and if they're not showing you 3 years of history, run the other way. Not walk, run the other way. Because if it's a good business, there should be history. That's why you're buying it. Unless you're looking for a distressed situation. But you should be able to see history. You should be able to see what the staff is, all those things. Those are the advantages. You've got existing staff. You've got existing customers. You're known in the marketplace to a degree. There's also downsides of buying an existing business. You never really know what the reasons are why people are selling. I can look at, there's some businesses out there where really good brands or really good businesses, and they're selling because the market has shifted. Imagine a business where you've got a customer base, and the customer base is tied to the primary owner. And it looks like it's an on-flowing customer base, but that owner was so good at building relationships. You buy the business, what happened to George? And all of a sudden, those people are looking for new places to go. So, or another one I hear, I've got some health issues. So I need to sell the business because I've got some health issues. That's what you, as a purchaser, well, that's a valid reason for selling. That's could be the right reason, but the business has to stand on its own. So you really want to look at, there's things with an existing business, you'll never have all the information. And banks are, whether you start a scratch or you buy an existing business, the banks typically aren't really excited about financing this. They will finance it as long as you secure everything. So that's something buying a franchise unit, now you're buying something where a lot of people have gone before you. Could be a few people, depends on the maturity of the franchise, but you're buying a business based on proven systems, processes, the intellectual horsepower of the leadership, and the intellectual horsepower of the other franchisees. That's what it's supposed to be. Just because something is franchised, it doesn't mean it's good. It means it's been duplicated. I can duplicate a good business but have weak leadership. It's still going to be a rocky road, right? So I'm going to talk a lot about the different things as we go through that. As I said at the beginning, self-employment isn't right for everybody. Franchising is good for a lot of people, like it because it's kind of the entrepreneurial intermediate area between corporate world and entrepreneurial world. I have the support mechanisms. I have a team. I still have to carry the load, and I'm more responsible, but I still have the resources. I'm used to that team environment and some of those support mechanisms. So why do people buy franchises? Why do people go into self-employment? As I said, each one of you need to define what success is to you. I've yet to meet somebody who hasn't said, I want something better, either for myself or my family. I could be wildly successful and I want to multiply that success, or I really just skated by, had some trouble in my corporate career, I'm tired of that. It doesn't matter. I want something better. I want more than I have now. That's not enough though. that's a good place to start. Think about it. Am I moving away from something? I've got this corporate pain over here. I've got this career pain over here. If I don't define where I want to get to, that's the vision, the goals, the dream, what you want to achieve. If I'm only running away from this, what am I going to do? I'm probably going to, when I get over here, self-create all the stuff that I had over here. So it's not enough to, I'm not happy over here. I've got to figure out what makes me sing over here. This gets you moving. That gets you off your butt. This gets you engaged and keeps you engaged. So when it's done right, there's success on your terms. And I'm going to now emphasize franchising because I see the track record in franchising. I can't say this about all businesses. When you own the business, nobody can take it away. This is assuming you're running the business well. This is assuming you're staying within the bounds of the rules of the franchise. So you can't be downsized, right-sized, outplaced, laid off, doesn't matter. These are the corporate pains we're moving away from, right? Scalability. A lot of people think if I buy a franchise, I've got to grow it and grow it and grow it. No. Scalability is on your terms. This is part of what you define. Where do I want to get to? I have clients who want to build a mini empire. I have clients who I get here and I want to be able to coast. I want to have quality of life. I want to have a good income, but I don't need to grow it. And the franchisor, if you're meeting your obligations, the franchisor can't say, hey, there's 40% market share out there. Why aren't you going and getting it? They can ask you. If you have a good answer, they can't say, well, go out and get it. So that's your choice. Lifestyle flexibility. I see this more and more as the primary reason why people are driving the business, going into business ownership. You set that level of engagement. Now, when I say you, a lot of people think, well, I just want to work this level. Okay, I can work this level. I can hire people to make the business go like that. So that's where the combination of your engagement and your scalability, some businesses, it is tied to you. And one of the slides I'm going to share with you today, it's going to give you the different pictures of the businesses. But what do you want? And greater financial independence, breaking that cycle. So those are reasons why we see a lot of people when it's done right. So, any one of you ever say this to yourselves? At some point, I'd like to start my own business, but it's way too risky. Risk is different to each of us. I like this slide because, good cartoon. My business partner, Mike Martin, he is afraid of heights, but he skydives. Doesn't quite equate, right? He says, Gary, I'm not really afraid of flights. I just don't like ladder. They're not secure. I'm afraid of landing badly. Skydiving is really, it's really linear. It's got all the safety mechanisms. It's a lot of fun. It's either a really good day or it's a really bad day. There's no in between. And I've never had a bad day, he said. So, but think about it. Think about it a little differently. What is risk to you? Here's a clue. Myself, I describe myself as having an 85% risk tolerance. There's no science to it. There's no math. It's just, I need to be 85% sure of something before I commit. If I'm 84.7, if I'm 82%, you can't move me to a yes with a tow truck or a crane. If you want an answer before I'm there, the answer is going to be no. But once I'm 85%, it's ready, fire, aim. I'll figure out the rest as I go. Now, if you're 70%, so you're really comfortable with risk, you need a little bit of information and off you go, well, that's good. You'll be able to make decisions more quickly, but, I should have thought of that before I executed. So there's risk in buying a business prematurely and then having some negative surprises after. The other side, if you're hyper-analytical, and there's more hyper-analyticals than there are the easy decision makers. Let's say you've got to dot every I, cross every T. You've got to do your spreadsheets. You've got to analyze the market, all those different things. I've got to be like 97% sure. Well, you're going to have a very secure decision. You're going to have a safe decision in buying a business. But that very same research pattern, the philosophy, how you do one thing is how you do all things. While you're now making decisions in your business, while you're doing all that analytical, your competitors are doing what? Zoom. Zoom. They're just blowing by you. So you risk losing market share, not moving fast enough. And so if you're hyper analytical, you want to be aware of that. If you're too analytical, business ownership might not be the right place for you. That's one of the indicators, because you have to get comfortable with risk. I look at risk, before we take risk, what do we do? Fear, doubt, skepticism. In the absence of information, what does the human brain do? Fills it up with negative stuff. Well, I look at fear, doubt, and skepticism through research, folks, are your best friends. You manage and reduce fear by paying attention to what is the noise that fear, doubt, and skepticism is creating. What are the questions that are being asked? So if I'm afraid that this company it's a really competitive space, the doubt and skepticism comes, well, they're not going to be able to help me find enough companies or enough customers. So I'm going to stop my research, and that's what we say, not a good strategy. You don't stop your research until you know why it's not a good fit for you. Okay, Mr. Franchisor, Ms. Franchisee, how does the franchisor enable me to get my share of customers? What are the marketing strategies? So the fear creates the gap, and then your research identifies, can the gap get closed so you're comfortable enough? It's not the reason to stop research, as I said. Don't make judgments from perceptions. Think of franchise research, folks, as you are in the information harvesting stage, not the information processing stage. A lot of people, I get some information, I want to process it right away. You want to do what? You ever heard, you tell one of your friends about a business and you just grew a third eye. What, are you nuts? You know how bad that business is? You know what happened to one of my friends? Never heard that before. So that's other people's perceptions. Don't let other people's perceptions get in your way. Pay attention to what they are, what is the doubt or the fear they're created, and then do your research. Harvest the information. When you get enough information, think of it as a scatter diagram. You're getting a whole bunch of dots and you're looking for the clusters. The clusters of information, I'll talk about who that is later on today. Those clusters of information, it's either going to resonate with you enough or it's not going to resonate with you. So it's based on consolidated information. One of the biggest areas of frustration for would-be franchisees is franchisors don't give you financial information, or very few do, because of the Arthur Wishart Act, the franchise legislation in Ontario. So you have to get that. You can't buy a business without understanding about it financially, right? And it's not just what the business earns. What does it take to earn that money? What are your roles and activities you got to do? So you have to talk to a lot of people. So that's what we mean about consolidated information.
So are you saying they are not the franchisor is not obliged to provide that information financially?
That's correct. So the question is if franchisors are not obliged to provide the financial information. Under the Arthur Wishart Act, they are obliged by law to provide you with a disclosure document. If there's earnings claims in that document, they are allowed to talk to only the earnings claims that are in that. So a lot of franchisors say, well, we're not going to provide that to you, so you got to talk to our franchisees. They'll give their financial statements of the parent company, but that's no indicator of how well the franchise unit is doing. That's why so many people come to us, because we help them through that. So is this what I think? Perception. Is this what I know for a fact? Your job, folks, is to get to the, I know this is the right business for me. Here's why. Here's how I'm going to do that. You're going to hear me say that several times today. I know why. Here's how. I know why. It aligns with my vision, my values. It leverages my skill sets. It has good systems and processes I can manage. It takes advantage of my strengths. My gap areas, it's got systems and processes. Whatever it is, there's all kinds of stuff. But if I think it's the right business for me, you're asking for trouble. I'm going to buy this because I think it's the right business for me. Far, far too many people have bought franchise. It's a good franchise. It's a great brand. I'm going to challenge that. So self-employment, where you saw a few minutes ago the slides on employment being riskier as we get the longer, we maintain self-employment. The longer you're in self-employment, the less risky it becomes. Now there's always going to be risk. Risk doesn't go away in self-employment. But why do we maintain this? Think about it. Every year that you're running your business, you're making mistakes and you're learning from those mistakes. Every year you're running your business, you're having wins. You're getting some good results, and you're learning from those. You're building relationships with the customers. You're building relationships with centers of influence. People can send you business. You should be doing some level of community involvement. So you become a part of the community you're operating in. All those things reduce risk. Doesn't make the risk go away. A franchise is a consolidated mass of information and resources of that learning curve that you've gone through. If you have 100 franchisees and the franchisor fosters intercommunication between the franchise base, you've got a really, really strong resource base to accelerate your launch into business. Equity. Equity in business ownership starts at day one. But this hockey stick effect, usually there's no value or very little value for the first 2 to 3 years in launching your business. That's when you're grinding it through. That's when you're just getting that presence in the marketplace. But once you hit that middle where you've hit your stride and you get that ramp up, you should see a significant increase in equity value of the business. And equity value is often overlooked, but that's a big part why a lot of people go into business. Now, if I sold my business, let's say my business was, let's say I was earning $100,000 a year in my business. If I'm an independent business, start from scratch business, I sell my business, I will likely get, and these are general numbers, I will likely get 1 to 2 times the annual profitability of that business. So I'll sell it for $100,000 to $200,000. If I have a franchise in the exact same business, the same industry, I can sell that business for 2.5 to 3.5 times its annual profitability. That's because the franchising has there's more acceptance in the marketplace. There's more security when the new owner takes over. There's systems and processes to follow. If I sell my business for $350,000, how much of that does the government take? What do you think the tax rate is? Okay, this gentleman here is saying 50%? 70? Okay, yeah. There's a couple of things about we won't go into what our views on taxes. Anybody familiar with the lifetime capital gains tax? Canadians can right now lifetime capital gains $824,000. Vast majority of Canadians will never realize their lifetime Canadian capital gains. You get 100% of that tax-free, provided you've not exceeded your capital gains. This is one of the things that people think about when they buy a business is, when you're doing your financial analysis, it's not just what I'm earning this year and next year, it's what is my exit strategy. So equity is a really, really important part. Now, not all businesses create equity, and I'll talk to that when I go through the spectrum. So the axiom that most people are trying to get their heads around, the longer you own a business, the greater the security, the longer you're in job, the lower the security. And that's what we're seeing, and that's why we're seeing so many people. That Royal Bank survey saying 92% want to be in business, 79% think corporate employment is more risky than self-employment. So we maintain, how do you change the cycle? What I call the alternative career path. Doesn't matter if you're in your first downsizing, your second, doesn't matter if you're 45 or you're in your 30s, it doesn't matter. But instead of taking, that 9 to 12 months, what those red bars represent, we say franchise research, proper franchise research takes 3 to 4 months from date of engagement of research to date of decision to buy the franchise. So you either use the first bar or the second bar to start. Then you buy the business. Okay, now that's what your next bunch of years looks like. This could be in some businesses, the gap from here could be a bit more of a curve, but think of it as this is year one. Instead of having unemployment looking for a job, I'm using that business to ramp up my business. And now I get to my level of stride. Could take a year, could take some business take 3 years to get there. This is part of your research, understanding what that looks like. How many red bars are in that picture after that? Yeah. So that's what you want to look at. You're sacrificing year one, year two to launch the business and create that permanent pattern. You are in control of that. You are in control of the trajectory. You're in control of the level. If you coast, hey, I got a business. Hey, I got staff. I don't have to do much. Guess what? Your profitability is going to be down here. It's one of the things about business ownership is the more you put into it, the more you should get out of it, providing you're running it well. So we maintain what we're wanting to challenge you and get you to look at is moving from being a chance to be, like this is about managing risk, getting the decision to, you understand enough of the components so that it's a manageable decision. Find a business that's affordable. Okay, most people think money. Well, it's got to be affordable. You've got to factor in what is the initial investment. You've got to factor in your personal working capital. What does that mean? Well, if your monthly expense base is $5,000 and it takes 12 months to get your business to the point where you can take money out of it, well, guess what, folks? That's another $60,000 on the investment because that's got to be funded while you're launching the business. And a lot of people overlook that. What about the working capital for the business? If it's a location business, I've got rent, I've got staff, I've got utilities. I've got no customers day one. A year later, I've got my expenses covered, but I'm not drawing income yet. So that's all called working capital. That's business working capital. That's got to come from somewhere. Franchisors, you'll see a lot of disclosure documents stating 3 months of working capital, $40,000 or whatever the number is. Rarely is that enough. It's your job. A lot of people think, well, they say 40,000 is working capital. I'm going to assume that's 40,000 to break even. No. That's what they say for the first 3 months. They don't say how many months it takes to get to break even. So understand the numbers. Confirm you have the skills to run a business. If you've managed people, managed processes, developed a specialty skill at something, or been in sales, it doesn't matter. Most people, once they've hit mid-career, have the skills to run a business. So don't be so hard on yourself. The question is what business? That's why you're here, right? So that's what you're looking at. If you could confirm you had that, you brought that to the table, would you seek it out? Would you seek out business ownership? Now I'm saying seek is researching, not buying. Buying is something you do at the very end when everything lines up. You don't say yes until you're sure enough it's the right decision. I know this is the right business for me. Here's why. Here's how. Avoiding risk is not a long-term strategy. That cycle is here. Whether you buy a business or not, you have to plan retirement. How am I going to manage my financial portfolio through those cycles? One of my favorite subjects, perceptions. As I said, we've placed over 600 people in business, and the vast majority of them would have told us after they bought, I would have never picked it from a list, and I would have never seen myself in that business. I have one client, his name is Colin. Colin was a senior vice president for Sprint, and he's given me permission to share this story. Colin was making a very healthy six-figure income, and vice president of sales, just buttoned, the fitness, really into fitness, really just buttoned down on everything. I showed him a sign franchise. I showed him a business coaching franchise. I showed him a commercial janitorial cleaning franchise and one other. To the commercial janitorial cleaning, he said, "What the bleep are you wasting my time for? I'm never going to look at that business." Image risk, right? Couldn't see that. So we got him looking at the other 3 businesses. 6 weeks later, he came back and he said, "Tell me about that janitorial business again." 3 months later, ended up buying it. Is one of the top guys in the country. He owns east half of Toronto. He has a rights to part of the national franchise, and he's making more money than he ever did in corporate. But for perception, ladies and gentlemen, but for perception, he had the wherewithal to say, maybe I should keep an open mind. He would have missed that opportunity. So what you appear to be a good business on the surface often is not, and what doesn't appear to be a good business often is. So don't let your perceptions or your friends and family's perceptions stop your research. As I said earlier on, it's a data point. Take the data point in, What is the fear and doubt and skepticism around that? Then go after. Does that make sense? So these are some recent success stories. The first one, this was a director of operations at Expertech, a big tech company. This is actually, I leave this one. This person bought the franchise a while ago. This guy was at the director level and was being groomed for the C level. So my partner Mike Martin worked with this client. Okay, so you're thinking about job risk. No, I've got lots of opportunity. I'm making really good money. I love my job. And we've got a really flexible company. They really honor them. My wife's a professional, I'm a professional. They really honor what our work-life balance is. We're just going, okay, you've got what most people would just die for in an ideal job. Why are you even thinking about self-employment? He says, you're right. We do have a great relationship, but I've begun to think about things differently. I have one employer, and as I have one employer, I have one customer. And that customer can choose at any time when to sever the relationship, and I can't control that. I know there's going to be risk in business. I know I've got to go out and do a lot of work to get customers, but I'd rather have a whole bunch of customers so I can choose. If I lose one, I can go out and get another one. So for this person, it was about control and long-term management of risk. This client, I worked with him earlier this year. This gentleman, a 70-hour week was a short week. He had an exterior landscaping company, very successful, several crews. 6 a.m. would be a slow start for him, and 7, 8 o'clock would be in the evening, would be an early night for him. He was always on. And no quality of life. And you've got your summer, you've got the spring, the summer, the fall. He's got all the green stuff, the landscaping stuff. The winter was snow. And what do we know about snow? It's either here or it's not. When it's here, it's like, why aren't you cleaning my driveway? He had a lot of contracts, but he got tired of that grind. He bought a franchise where he's going in and servicing restaurants in their bathrooms, in their paper and soap products and stuff, and he creates a long-term repeat customer base with a whole bunch of different customers. This business is a sales role, it is a management of technicians role, and a management of suppliers role. This gentleman here, that's this gentleman here, one of the senior people at Dundee, had one of their stars, Dundee Wealth Corporation. Bay Street guy. Came to me at the franchise show in February, and great career in Bay Street, but the Bay Street is changing. Again, similar things we talked about before. Longer hours, less return, less certainty. I want something that I can build for myself, but I want something really scalable. I want to grow through other people. I want to be that commander-in-chief. He bought a master franchise for a company that does expense reduction consulting, so he's going to be leading white-collar professionals, analysts and sales professionals to grow that business. This lady, senior executive career transition firm, Mike does 80 to 100 seminars a year at all the career transition firms in Toronto. One of the career transition firms had a new vice president a few years ago, and she said, well, before we have you keep on coming in doing our monthly seminars, I want to audit. I want to make sure that this is something we want to keep on doing. So Mike talked about passive engagement. I'll be talking about passive engagement later on. And the lady came up to him after and said, tell me about that business. She ended up buying a three-unit development package for a Snap Fitness, which is the 724 Fitness. They bought 3 more afterwards. And she's still vice president of the company. So some businesses have that, keep your day job and build and hire a manager on the side. And then this last one, this was somebody worked for in the lumber industry, in like the retail lumber, had a lot of experience on working with the suppliers, working with the customers, working with the commercial customers. But he also, one of his areas of focus that he really enjoyed was marketing. He bought an internet marketing franchise. So lots of different stories. What is the main point? Doesn't matter how senior you are, what your roles are, what the business or the background was, where you end up, there is no correlation. What you're looking at is transferable, leverageable skills. Risk happens. So first step is you have to create your own filter, ladies and gentlemen. You have to look at what do you bring to the table before you look at businesses. You can't go out there and, I'll know it when I see it. And I hear that so often. Or, it depends. You know, what is your investment level? It depends. Well, it does depend, but still you have to know. So what are your transferable skills? Think about it this way. When you look backwards to your career, here's one of the most important questions you can ask. What have I been really good at and that I really, really like to do that I want to see elements of in my business? I'll give you an example. I like working with people. Okay? A little too broad. It doesn't tell me anything. What do you like doing with people? Well, I like working with people, coaching, counseling, building a team, so that would be the manager type. I really enjoy understanding people's needs and wants and challenging them and presenting options to them. That would be the sales type of, and everywhere in between. So what is it what are your transferable skills? There's customer generation, so the whole marketing and sales. There's operations, there's HR, there's finance. What are the buckets of organizations and running a business? And what is it that very few people have skills in all the areas. So where do your skills shine? But your skills, I've trained over 1,000 salespeople in my career. I'm really good at it. I got really good results. I'd rather watch paint dry. There's no emotional connection anymore. I did all the challenges, I solved all the problems, and it just doesn't charge me. Now, if I bought a business sales training, yeah, I could do it. How fun would it be? So you've got to have passion for the work. So when I talk about passions and interests, what are you passionate about? What roles are you passionate about? What are the like think about on your volunteer work or anything else. What are the things that I can convert from my passions? The passion needs to be around the role, not the product or service. I have a very important slide on that later on. What are your core criteria? What are my financial and lifestyle criteria that have to be satisfied through business ownership? I have young kids. I need to have my evenings and weekends free. That would be an important criteria. Now, if the business needed you, if it's a tutoring franchise, and you've got to be 3 nights a week till 8 p.m., probably some imbalance there. So, these are your must-have criteria. What are your nice-to-have criteria? I love outdoors. I love a lot of flexibility in my schedule. So if I got a business I got to be outdoors a lot, that would be cool. But it doesn't have to be there. That's a nice-to-have. A must-have, whatever your must-have criteria are, and typically we recommend 3, maybe 4 must-haves. Because if you have too many must-haves, it's really hard to find. But if you have 3 or 4 must-haves, if 3 of them are there and the 4th one isn't, close the file. That's a must-have. It's really good. It makes me the money that I want. It gives me the lifestyle I want. But it doesn't have this. It's still going to conflict. Doesn't matter how good that is over there. It's still going to be conflict. So this is really, really important. So it doesn't matter how good your strengths are, what your desired. It doesn't matter how much technology. There's a lot of technology, a lot of different business. I love the driving analogy and the automotive analogy. You're going to see it. A business is a vehicle. A car is a vehicle. A truck is a vehicle. Doesn't matter. You can have a beautiful Mercedes-Benz and you don't have a driver's license. You can be a race car driver and you're put in a semi-trailer. It doesn't matter. The business, somebody's got to drive the vehicle, folks. And that somebody is you as the owner. So you better make sure that the technology, the tools, the processes are all leveraging your skill set, or where the gaps are, the franchisor systems, training, and processes really fill those gaps. The ideal is where your core areas are where their core strengths are. That is acceleration and maximization.
We have driverless cars these days.
Yeah, driverless cars. Well, think about that. And we were talking about technology, and imagine having a taxi business these days with Uber. I talked to somebody yesterday afternoon, and they were asking about the hotel business. And think about Airbnb. So you have to have the right skills, and you have to drive it regularly. Regularly is to learn the business so that you can help other people manage it. It doesn't say regularly and permanently. It's regularly through launch. Some businesses are designed that you always have to be on. Some businesses are designed passive engagement. Get it up, learn it, 3 to 6 months of running it, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks of running it, depending on the model. That's rare. And then you execute the plan. I don't care what business you have. I don't care how good you are in business. That is you, day one. That, in reality, is a very dangerous situation where it causes a lot of damage. Well, if you get into a business that you don't have the right tools, you don't have the training or the support, that is an accident, and the accident is in your bank book and in your relationships and whatnot in your life. So be prepared for that, and what does the franchisor do to help you learn how to drive the vehicle you're going to drive? A job is a vehicle as well. You think you're driving the pace car, sorry, the boss is driving the pace car, and the senior management has got the red flags when they decide they want to pull you off the track. So let's look at franchising a little deeper. Oh, I love this slide. If I was a story writer, I saw this slide and I just had to get it in my presentation. As it relates to business ownership, what do you see here? I see a lot of vulnerable people. I also see a lot of ignorant people, okay, or insecure people, whatever you want to call it. But let's, as it relates to business ownership, this person here, they bought a franchise because it was a big brand. I'm going to share a little bit later why that is one of the biggest myths in franchising. Just because it's a big brand doesn't mean it's a good business. This person here bought a franchise after talking to the franchisor, learned everything about the franchisor. Franchisor told an awesome story. We have this great location, bought the franchise, but didn't talk to any franchisees. Didn't realize what the franchisor said, what the reality was on running the business, didn't understand what it took to run the business. This person here bought a mature system that had been up and running for 20 years and had a stable brand and a really good reputation, but they found out 6 months in that the business model had completely changed, and there was a reason why all the franchisees were selling, because the business model had shifted away from what the marketplace needed. So it's declining. And the last one I'll pick on would be this person here. They talked to 3 franchisees. Franchisor said, here's our top people, go talk to them. Great and wonderful story. And they bought the franchise. They didn't talk to the medium performers or the unhappies, and they didn't realize that just because somebody's a top performer doesn't represent the entire brand. There's all kinds of examples, folks, why people fail in business. 80% of franchises succeed. I would say differently, this represents the 20% that don't succeed. Now, in self-employment, that's 50%. There's a lot more people on this slide. Even with the work that we do, we've placed 600 people in business, we have an 8% failure rate. Much lower than the industry. It's one of the best ratios on the entire continent, because we help people get to clarity, but there is still risk. We've had people, they get to the business and then 2 years later they go through a divorce and the business suffers. We've had people where this is a lot harder than I thought. I'm well off financially. I don't want to work this hard. I'm closing my business. Personally, that's really frustrating for me because that person quit. But that's not my life, it's their life. So understand what the business takes to run and understand what you're up against. So I maintain, as I said a few minutes ago, just because something is franchised, it doesn't mean it's good, it means it's been duplicated. So what are the qualities of a good franchise? You've got a proven and operational franchising experience. That means the leadership, if I'm running a maid's business, I better know as the franchisor how to run a maid's business. And I better have franchise executives who have been running franchising. That's strong leadership. If I'm a young franchise, there's risk in young franchises, but lots of opportunity in young franchises. I've been running this business, now I'm franchising my business. Well, if I don't hire a franchise executive, or if I don't hire a franchise consulting firm to create the infrastructure and systems, that to me is, I've got the operational but not the franchising. It still could be a good business, but it's got risk. Financial strength to support growth. It costs about $500,000 to create a franchise system. Some of that self-funds as you add franchises, but if that franchisor doesn't have strong financial resources and you want to grow fast, as you add franchisees, guess what you got to add? You got to have staff to support the franchisees, right? So we look for that. This is why you should be buying a franchise. The systems and the process, not the brand. The systems and the process is how it leverages skills. Trend relevance. A lot of people, what are the trends? I'm going to talk to trends later on, but what are the trends that are driving the market and what are the trends that the market's moving away from? Food. Think about food. Food is one of the most popular areas of franchising. 40% of franchises are food. Well, everybody's got to eat. It's got to be a good business. But unless the food franchises stay on trend and invent or reinvent or continually innovate in their menu, what happens? They go by the wayside. And there's all kinds of examples of that. And the most important that trumps all of these is the strong franchisee validation. What do the existing franchisees say about their franchisor? These are the things that we look for when we represent a franchise. They've got to have all of these. So let's look at some misperceptions and myths, okay? The franchisor makes all the money. Well, there are franchises like that. I call them parasitic. A good franchise relationship is symbiotic. The franchisor wins only after you win, ladies and gentlemen. They win through the franchise royalty stream. The stronger business you have, the stronger the royalty stream. So the royalty stream is about value. Okay, franchise businesses are too expensive. I'm going to refute that later on. Over 50% of franchise businesses are under $125,000 to start. Why do we think they're so expensive? We see all the big franchises, all the big brands, and they are location-based. Guess what? Those are expensive, but that doesn't represent the whole market. I can't wait 2 to 3 years to make the money. Okay, there are some franchises, especially passive engagement, where you hire a full-time manager. It can take that long to make money. Elder care can take longer to make money. Once you get on the other end, it's really, really strong. But most franchises, I tell my clients, expect 6 to 9 months of no income. Even if the business is profitable, you're reinvesting in the business. But year 1 is your sacrifice year. Year 2 is your build year. You're making money in year 2. It's not as much money as you like to make, but you're growing. And then year 3, you should be at stride in most businesses. And stride is whatever that income is that you want to set for your long-term pace. I can't make any money in a part-time business. Well, let's define part-time business. To me, a part-time business is the only time the business is running is when you're running it. Think of direct marketing, multi-level marketing. Well, when I go to this recruiting meeting and I'm recruiting people, then I'm there. And until I have a downline, I don't have anything unless I'm recruiting people, right? Well, I see people saying, well, I'm going to try it out part-time, and if I can make the business work, then I'll go into it full-time. That's akin to sticking your toe in the water, and if it's comfortable, then you'll get down to your knees, and then you jump in. Trouble is, when you launch the business is when the business and the marketplace needs the most out of you. If you're only part-time engaging the business, you're not going to realize the mistakes you're making. You're not seeing the opportunities you're missing. And the lessons in between both successes and failures are few and far between. And the clients don't get to see you. It takes way longer, and that in itself creates a lot of risk. So I don't believe in part-time businesses on that definition. Now, passive engagement is a different part-time business. Passive engagement, I buy a business, the business is open full-time, and I hire a full-time manager to run it. I work 10 to 15, maybe 20 hours a week managing the manager and managing the process. But the business is open full-time. Now, some franchises are designed as passive engagement. Some franchises say they're designed as passive engagement. Here's the litmus test. If they say, yes, you can do full-time or passive engagement, okay, how many franchisees do you have in passive engagement structure, and where are they in the bell curve? If they're all in the bottom quartile of the performance of the franchise base, that tells me that passive engagement model is not sound, or at least it's weak. So they should be peppered throughout the bell curve if it's a good model. So yes, you can make money in part-time businesses. It's about understanding them. The market is already saturated. Way too much competition, Gary. Competition is good to a point. Competition means there's a lot of people buying the product or service. So don't let competition get in your way. It's what is the franchisor doing to get their fair share or your fair share as a franchisee of the marketplace. Once I get my fair share, how do I accelerate to mind share, M-I-N-D? I want to be top of mind, I get more than fair share. So it's a misperception. That's what franchisors are really good at. I don't want to buy myself a job. That's what a lot of people think. Counter and cash register, I don't want a long hours, low paying job. Well, that's appropriate in some businesses, especially some of the lower cost location franchises. It's understanding what are the roles, what do you got to do, what's the outcome, and what's the returns you get. So all these things stop people from even looking. Most common mistake, I'm coming back to big brand now. Big brand is good because it has customer relevance. It's got instant credibility. But what does it do? It brings people into the door once or twice. If they have a bad experience, are they going to come back? They might come back once. But if they have a bad experience, is it the franchisor's fault or is it the person who owns the franchise operating the systems and processes? Yeah. So it's understand when you're going in looking at businesses and you have a bad experience, don't associate it with the franchise, associate it with the operator. When you're looking at yourself, can you run that business? So I care more about the systems and process. This is why validation of existing franchisees is so important, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to tell you how good that system and process is. They're going to tell you how good that support is. They're going to tell you how good the marketing, all those, you get to test drive it through talking to other people. So this is the reality, the ability to run the business, proven systems and processes. I don't have to have a mature brand to have proven systems and processes. I can have a brand in the US that you're early mover in Ontario, and that's a really good system, provided the customer base is the same. Does that make sense? So again, all of these are vehicles. They're designed to get you from point A to point B. An automotive vehicle, it's in distance, a business in time. And again, I'll reiterate what I said before. You gotta love the ride. Because you're gonna be the one creating that ride. Are you a utility vehicle? You need a business that there's a lot of things that have to be managed, or that sports, that image. So if you make some correlations to what is important to you? What are the things that you want the business to represent? It's an extension of your image. And who has to put the gas in the vehicle? Not the franchisor. Gas equals customers. That's your job as the franchisee to execute the marketing strategies. Franchisor can have big brand strategy, but you've got to have local engagement strategy and client retention strategies to make it work. Oh, one of my favorite slides. This is probably the most important slide in the whole presentation. How to fail in franchising, how to fail in business. I can't tell you how many times people tell me, I love the product. I love cooking, let me go into the restaurant business. I love coffee, I want a coffee shop. Well, I will use an example here. Ice cream. Who doesn't like ice cream? Diabetics. But think about it. It's a comfort food. My kids love ice cream. I do. My grandparents, it's one of those places, I remember growing up in Winnipeg, we had a place called the Bridge Drive-In. We used to go and wait in line for ice cream. So I used to live in Georgetown, which is just northwest of Toronto, about 20 minutes out of Mississauga. We had a Dairy Queen there. Me being an entrepreneur, I had to drive down to Mississauga, about 20 minutes away, to go to Baskin-Robbins. Georgetown is growing. There's lots of hoses being sold. Let's say I was really smart. And, well, geez, Georgetown can handle a Baskin-Robbins. So I decide I'm going to research Baskin-Robbins. And what do I find? I find out that it's a really good brand, which it is. I look at their systems and processes, and that they're really good. And then I talk to the franchisees, and a lot of the franchisees have really good things to say about the franchisor, which they do. And so I buy an ice cream franchise, Baskin-Robbins. If you came to me a year later and asked me what business I'm in, what do you think I'd hear? Or what do you think you'd hear? Common answer is, duh, you're in the ice cream business. I've had some people when I ask this question, well, you're in the customer service business. Yeah, I am. You're in the marketing business. Yeah, I am. You're in the inventory business. Yeah, I am. All those are right. I would tell you, I'm in the business of managing part-time transient teenagers and worrying about cash. Role of the owner. Now, I use Baskin-Robbins as an example, but any retail business where you've got inbound, where you've got counter-level or entry-level staff, what do you have to do? You have to manage turnover. You have to manage schedules. There's a whole bunch of things. Now, this is where the risk comes in. If I was a senior executive working in IT or marketing and all my entire career, all I did was work with executives, how easy is it going to be for me to go in and talk to Johnny or Susie, whose idea of vision is 3 hours from now? I might have a little bit of a challenge. Now, on the other hand, if I was a retired school teacher or some other expertise where I worked with kids my career, how much easier would that be? I know how to relate to them. I know how to coach them. I know how to communicate them. I can rely more effectively on the franchisor systems and processes and execute the business model. So the emotions for the product or service as the main criteria is a big mistake. I don't have to like the product or service. I don't have to use the product or service. I have to have 100% value conviction. I have to believe 100% that that's a good value offering. Otherwise, I'm a huckster if I'm trying to sell it. So that's what you've got to look at for yourselves. Okay, choosing a franchise which you have industry experience. Let's talk about the teachers. I'll pick on them again. What do teachers like to do? Teach. Okay, so early 90s, tutoring franchises, they were just opening. They were growing like crazy, and they're saying, who will be really good franchisors for us? Teachers. And teachers are saying, this would be a really good franchise for us to buy. And so there's a lot of that happening. A lot of franchises got awarded to teachers. 2-3 years later, there's a lot of unhappy franchisees and unhappy franchisors because the revenues weren't there and the business wasn't working. Why? Teachers like to teach. What is a tutoring franchise, ladies and gentlemen? A tutoring franchise is a staffing agency for tutors. What does it take to run a staffing agency? I have to do sales. I have to get out, engage the marketplace. I have to build relationships. I got to go to the schools. I got to go to the community centers, build referral sources. I got to advertise, and I have to schedule tutors. Where is teaching in that? I have to engage with students and do the assessments, but once that assessment is done, I'm turning it over to one of my qualified staff. Role of the owner. Understand what the roles of the owner are. So industry experience, I'll say a little bit more to this. Franchisors do not want your industry experience. Less than 10% of franchisors are looking for industry experience. That's usually in the food category. That matters there. It accelerates the speed of getting up to running. What comes with industry experience is your bad habits. Franchisors don't want to help to teach you how to do something over again. They want to take your transferable, leverageable skills, teach you how to bring those parts over that optimize this business best and execute their business model. So if you've never worked with kids before and you've got to run a tutoring franchise, that's a lot of learning that takes place. And guess what happens? The more the learning, the longer time to positive cash flow, the more risk you engage. So think about what are your transferable, leverageable skills. Then finally, misplaced passion. You've probably heard the saying, read the book, or listened to the tapes, do what you love, the money will follow. Well, I liken that, where I interpret that, and when I've looked at those resources, it's about what are you passionate about, what are your hobbies, and if you develop it part-time, get it up and going full-time. It kind of counters what I said before. But I look at it a little differently. What are you passionate about? What do you do in your spare time? What do you really, really like to do? My dad, he's 80 years old, and he loves to golf. Up until last year, he was walking Lowville, which is a course in Milton, a very long, difficult course on the escarpment. He walked that 3 times a week. My dad also used to be head of the entire buying for Hudson Bay Company. He had 100 and something buyers under him. He knows retail more than most. So put retail background, golf, what do you got? Golf store. Pretty easy to extrapolate, right? If I love my passion and I love golf and I have retail background, let me buy a golf store. Okay, I'm a year in. Gee, I've got all these classes, I've got this inventory, I've got this staff. When am I golfing? A passion is something, if it's a hobby, it's something you use to recharge. Now let me make it a little bit more relevant. How many people here have toyed with consulting? Okay, a few. What's the number one role of a consultant?
Engage and advise.
Okay, engage and advise. Knowledgeable, okay. So I hear things like, I'm a change agent, I go in, I focus on this area, I'm a catalyst for change, all those, whatever it is, there's all kinds of consulting, there's all kinds of execution. I would tell you those are secondary. The primary role of a consultant is to sell. Until you have a customer, you got nothing. Now, if you've never sold before, if you don't know cold calling, you don't know what it's like to manage objections and manage rejection, you can be selling a lot and not getting customers. Most people say, I want a consulting because I love to do this fulfillment. Well, you better understand if you're thinking about consulting, what does it take to get the customer? So don't fall in love with what you've had years of experience. This is where the consulting, I've got years of experience, I'm invested in this career because it's what I've got, I can consult, I've run this in my company, I can do such a good job for other people, and you probably can, but how do you get into the door? So you have to understand what the execution is. That's why I come back to what are the roles of the owner, what does it take to drive business, what does it take to deliver the business? Are you the driver, are you the fulfiller, or what is the structure of the organization? So passion is about the type of work that the business requires most. So there's sales, business generation, there's customer engagement, there's operations, there's IT, and financial management. Those are, I'm generalizing a bit, but those are the buckets. If you're good or if you're excellent in any one of those areas, great. If you're excellent at two, even better. But if where your area of excellence is not what the franchise needs, you're still in trouble, folks. So you've got to get that alignment. You got to, what are your areas of excellence? What is the franchisor systems and processes that excels at and supports your gaps? So with Darling's saying, I'm moving everything. I'm going against the grain of what he's been led to believe, or you guys, you know, it's when we look at traditional career development and career coaching, yes, I am going against the grain. Did I say at the beginning I'm going to make you uncomfortable? See, I'm not saying ignore that. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. So thank you for the comment. What I'm saying is understand, if you're going to buy a business, before you buy it, understand what it takes. Like you don't want to move away from your passions and skills. The word there is misplaced, right? So I love working with people. My whole life, I've been working with people, helping them. I was a paramedic. I've done all kinds of volunteer work. I've always had a role of helping people. If I had a business that made a lot of money but didn't have a people engagement, that's what I mean about passion mission alignment. Does that help?
Yeah.
If I'm from the finance background and I have a really good book of relationships, I can go into the financial go at my own, start my own business. I can go out to those relationships. Okay, they're going to open the first wave of doors. Then what? See, and this is where short-sightedness. This is where I want you to think short-term, mid-term, long-term. What is the customer generation? That's the easy path. But is all your business going to come from those? If not, then you better figure out where the rest of the business is going to come from. All the right pieces, not the right places. So it can take a heck of a lot of effort you can still move that wagon, but it's a heck of a lot harder than if those wheels were on the inside. So your skills in the wrong vehicle are still going to be tremendously difficult. So I'm going to define small business for a couple of minutes. What is small business in Canada? Canada defines small business as under 100 employees. They define medium-sized businesses as 100 to 500 employees. I'm just going to talk about the small business. There's over 1 million small businesses in Canada. 98% have less than 5 employees. Guess what, folks? Almost all franchises are small businesses. 30% of all Canadian businesses And here's what I look at. It's the engine that creates more than 5 million Canadian jobs. We're 48% of the private sector labor force. Small business is a major, major player. 30% of the gross domestic product. So small business is a really, really serious factor. Now I'm going to take it further into franchising. Franchising is a strategy designed to gain and keep disproportionate market share. And I'm going to talk to what is disproportionate market share. 7.8% of all small businesses, 1 million small businesses, 78,000 franchises. That 78,000 franchises takes 33% of the total small business sector in revenue. So non-franchise businesses fight over the other 92%. So think of it this way. Would you rather be in the, call it 8% of businesses that are franchising, capturing 1/3 of the market, or in the other 92% fighting over the remaining 2/3 of the market? Disproportionate market share. Now, having said that, not all franchises, again, I'm going to reiterate, not all franchises are good. They've been duplicated. There's franchises taking a small bit of that. There's franchisors taking a major bite of that. You want to find a franchise that it leverages your skills, interests, and talents and plays well in the competitive market. 4 out of 5 millionaires booked Millionaire Next Door, Thomas Stanley, written in the last, I think it was around the 80s. The point of this book, this slide, is most people who become millionaires, become wealthy, do it by providing basic products and services through small business. It's not these wild internet flashes who make all kinds of money. It's people who go out, work consistently, and deliver the stuff that satisfies the needs of everyday Canadians. The old mentality, remember that first slide with the long box, work hard 5-6 days a week for 30 years, then retire? That's long gone. I call it the HOV lane of business. Have you ever been in the 401 or one of the other highways and you're stuck in one of the slow lanes by yourself? You just want to get over in that lane? And you're saying, geez, I wish I had one more person in my vehicle. Well, I maintain franchising, good franchising is that extra person in your vehicle. What do we know about HOV lanes? We know it took a lot of planning to get them done right. It took a lot of investment in infrastructure to create them. They have policing, systems, processes, execution, marketing. Well, guess what? Franchising is all that. Good franchising is all that. Proven systems and processes. Franchisees are getting that 8% compared to the 92%, are getting to their destination faster, and I dare say better systems, less stress, better effectiveness, because they've got support and systems and processes. So I call it the HOV lane of business. It is a proven way to reduce risk while you're getting your financial and lifestyle goals satisfied. Cost of a franchise. Remember I said less than, or 50% of franchises are under 125,000? Well, you look at, this is where that comes from, these three. Most franchises, we see most of the franchises these days going in this zone, $100,000 to $250,000. The bigger bricks and mortar, the visible face of franchising, that's why most people think franchising is so expensive. So it's a lot more affordable than people think. We see private sector, the service businesses that are some of the fastest areas of growth. Now here's a really interesting thing. There's no correlation between how much a business costs, what it takes to invest in it, and what the returns are. We actually see sometimes negative correlation. The more expensive it is, the debt service and everything else, the more operational aspects are, the less profitable it is per revenue dollar. So the primary correlation is how well the owner runs the business. I don't care what brand it is, I don't care what system, how young, how mature, what market they're in, if they're in Mississauga or Newmarket or Vancouver. Success in franchising, in any business, ladies and gentlemen, comes with how well you execute what needs to get executed. So how do you estimate your return on income when you buy a franchise? Annual owner's salary. So I call owner's salary total owner's compensation. I might pay myself $40,000 and have $50,000 in profit. That's a tax strategy. I'm ending up with 90 grand. Total owner's compensation is that. So we put those two, you want to look at that, but also living through the business. See, I have a home-based business. I have a executive office suite, but I do a lot of my work at home. Gee, I get to write off my office. I've got an office that's fully accounting. I've got my main office that I work on, and I meet clients in my downstairs. I get to write off about 30% of my home. My vehicle, my business owns my vehicle. I get to write off 85% of my vehicle. So I'm paying with pre-tax dollars through the company instead of post-tax dollars. So there's a number of legitimate expenses that are allowed and recognized by CRA that it makes it more affordable. So it's not just what the income is, it's what's the quality of life you're assessing. The biggest one is equity value. Remember that number I shared earlier on where I talked about where your lifetime capital gains? This is often overlooked. People look at, I'm making $100,000 over here, I need to make $100,000 in my business. Well, if I'm making $100,000, I'm putting $5,000 a year away or $10,000 a year away in savings, and that's my long-term retirement. Maybe I can make $80,000 over here because I'm living through my business and I'm creating that equity value, so I end up with the same place. All I'm saying is look at the whole picture. So, defining what a franchise is. A franchise is a license. It is a specialized form of distribution. You are buying the name, the trademarks, the ability to use their systems and processes, distribute products for a specified period of time. We see most terms 5 to 10 years. It's either a 5-year term or it's a 10-year year. The more expensive the investment, the longer the term. But you look at this. Doesn't that look like the kind of stuff you'd see in a Fortune 500 company, the systems and processes? You're getting that in a good franchise system, and you're paying for it. A franchise fee, let's talk about the initial franchise fee first. The franchise fee is you are buying that for access to these systems and processes. Part of that assumption is that they've invested in systems and process, they've invested in technology, they've invested in innovation, they are staying in touch with what's happening, and you're coming in and you're taking advantage of that entire consolidated learning curve and knowledge base. That gets you, that's what I talk about HOV lane, it's compressing time. So it's going to compress time from when you open, or from when you buy the franchise to when you open, compared to a same business non-franchise. From when you open to break even, and from break even to full stride, and full stride being the level of income you want to make. A good franchise will compress time. That's where the value of the franchise fee is. Royalties. You either pay it, and there's flat-based royalties where it's the same, like $400 a month regardless of how well you do. Most franchises, however, are a percentage of sales. So it doesn't matter if you're profitable or not, they're taking their money at the beginning. And that's the way franchising is designed. I get asked regularly, what's a fair royalty? And I tell you, I've seen 4% that's ripping you off, and I've seen 14% that gives it away. So it's not what the royalty dollar is. Don't get confused by that. That's the wrong question. The right question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much value am I getting from my royalty dollar? You talk to 10 franchises, existing franchisees, and they're going to tell you, you should be hearing somewhere in that 7 to 8.5 range. Don't expect a 10. I'm one of the top franchisees in North America. I don't give my franchisor more than 8. They run a really good business. I just want more. I want them to continually innovate, right? So if it's a 5, that's a problem. I want to know what's going on. So whatever the questions are, you always, when you hear the answer, go positive first, then go negative. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is the ongoing, how much value are you getting for the ongoing royalty? You tell me a 7.5. Great. What's working? What do you like that you're giving it that score? What else? What else? What else? Okay. What's missing? Why didn't you give it a higher score? What's missing, or what are you doing what is the franchisor doing that you're not happy about? That's where you talk to 10 of those conversations. Do you think you're going to get an assessment of what the royalty value is, folks? I think you will. So it's understanding that. Now, the franchise business model itself, there is an inverse correlation. When they invest the most time in you is up front. The first 2 years, they're going to be all like really, really supporting you, investing a lot of time. And what's happening in their revenue from you? It's small, because you've got to do that with your business. Their royalties go like that too. So it's inverse. They make their money on the long term. So they are counting on you to run the business well, giving you a really good foundation, driving it long term, because that's where they win. Franchisors win last. The customer wins first, you as the franchisee wins second, the franchisor wins last. If you as the franchisee can't make the customer win, why the heck are you doing it? Okay, the other important slide on franchising, and this is giving, I call it the spectrum of franchising. I classify businesses in this slide a little differently than businesses are typically classified. Food, automotive, retail, business to business, business to consumer is usually how franchisers are classified. I come at it from what is the role of the owner. Let's start first with where everybody knows, inbound retail. Inbound retail is location-based. What does that mean? It means it's the highest cost compared to the franchising. It's also, if it's retail, what are the 3 rules of retail? Location, location, location. What does that mean? AAA rent if it's a high foot traffic business. So it's got to have high visibility. That's part of the marketing. It's high site dependence. That's part of the marketing strategy. Why do so many people like it? It's low or no prospecting. I open up a location, people come in. So these businesses typically start at $250,000. You can find the odd one in the low or the high 100s, but most of these are in the 200. Often you see them in the 750 million, the big brands, Milestones and other brands like that. You're getting into multi-million-dollar operations, but most franchises are in 250 or 500. The role of the owner. I am manager. I am managing staff. I usually have, depending on the business, I usually have 10 to 20 staff, might be more if it's a bigger business. I am managing operations, I am managing inventory, I am managing processes, and the most important thing I'm managing is the customer experience. These businesses, you see often a 8 to 10% net profit margin. If you can get 14% net profit margin in retail, you are doing really well. There's a lot of operational costs. These businesses, if I want to open up another location, what do I have to do? If I want to grow, I got to open up another location, and I've got to have it far enough away from my franchise and any other franchise, so they're harder to grow. These businesses can be passive engagement. I can hire a full-time manager, but most are designed where you're running it. If I want to sell this business creates good equity. Because I've got a team. I'm not the face of the client, the face of the customer is not me, it's my staff. I can step out, new owner can come in and buy that business. There's a lot of value there. But you got to be able to manage people with that. So they're good businesses. People like them because I don't have to go out and sell. But you do have to invest in marketing. And you do have to engage the community. I don't care if it's a Tim Hortons or a small brand. The franchisor, in the best practices in franchising, the franchisee is engaging the community on some level. Next, we have outbound retail. Outbound retail, I'm still got a location based. The role of the owner, though, it's medium cost, where this might be 125 to, at the low end, to 300, maybe 350. I have some visibility. So there's some limits to that. I have to do some prospecting. As the owner, the customer comes to me, but I also do some selling. So it's not as site dependent because of that prospecting piece, but I still have to go out and buy the business. Profit margins in this business are 20 to 30%. 30% is really high, but usually 20% because I might have 3 or 4 staff. They're specialty staff, they're technicians, mailbox, etc. Sign businesses, print businesses, those would fit in here. Any of the food businesses, the Jiffy Lubes, the stuff like that would fit up there. A full-serve automotive would fit down here because fleet sales are the outbound sales. These businesses are also good for equity building, and I can sell them. But the role of the owner, I'm driving business, I'm managing a small base of customers, and I'm engaging the customers, or the marketplace. Outbound sales and service. This is professional services business, B2B, business coaching, sales training, things like that. Low cost, $70,000, $80,000. Low visibility, I say no visibility. This is a hunter business. The first one was a prospecting business, or a farming business. This is a hunter-farmer business. This is a hunter business. I got to go out, and this is where the consulting fits in. I got to eat what I kill. No equity value on these folks. I don't get a lot of resale value on these businesses, so I got to make money while I'm driving it. Roll the owners out. And then the last area, bridge business. We call it a bridge because the customers, it takes the location or the marketing style of the retail side, but it's the lower cost of this side. These are usually $125,000 to $250,000. For where I'm buying, if I'm buying a franchise for $300,000 in location business, I'm getting a small part of Richmond Hill. This, I could buy all of Richmond Hill. And now I own the market, but I don't have a location. I am marketing, and customers are coming to me. So this is where elder care comes in. The maid's business is a bridge business. The customers are going, I'm managing a force. This is a staffing agency for service providers. They create good value. So a number of different things there. What are my choices and how do I get started? Food would be inbound retail. This could be inbound or outbound retail. If I'm just servicing cars like the lube shops, it goes in the first one. If it's full serve automotive, business services is usually in the bridge businesses. Home and personal service is one of the fastest growing areas of franchising. Home and personal services, the aging population, the baby boomers. Like, think about this. This is personal care. There's home improvement. There's a lot of things here. Educational services, tutoring is consistently effective. We want to invest in our kids. We want them to have a better opportunity in the competitive world. But educational services also applies to business education. Every professional athlete has a coach. A lot of strong business leaders recognize they need coaching as well. You can do single unit, which is what most people do. Multiple units, people come in and say, I want an investment. This is often in passive engagement. I want to start with one, get it up and running, then expand to another one, then expand to another one. So new concept coming in, I want all of Richmond Hill. Well, you pay the franchise fee for 3 up front, and then you open one, then 12 or 18 months you open the second one, the third one. That's how that works. Area development is where you're going to buy the whole city. Like you might buy 10 or 20 and you operate them all yourself. And then master franchising, where you buy the rights to a city, a province, or the country. What drives franchise and growth? Convenient services. People think, what the heck is that? We are in a time-crunched society. We are in the dual income, busy lives. I might drive 8 minutes, but if I got to drive 12 minutes, I'm going to find something 8 minutes away. Think about that. Think about the choices you make. So it's about convenience. Do I have to go to a blind store or a flooring store? Or wouldn't it be great if they came to me with samples and I could pick the products in my home in my colors? Oh, and then they're going to come and install them. I don't have to figure all that. So that's what I mean by convenience business. Aging population. The baby boomers consistently are a driver, and they still are. They will be for many years. So people think when they look at this, they think elder care, personal health care. Well, anything that the aging baby boomer needs fits in there. Travel is an aging population business. Healthier lifestyles, that can go from fitness and wellness to, it could be maids' businesses being green, using green products. Cocoon boon, protecting the family unit, so how do we keep the family together? That's becoming less important than education is the other big trend. Where does money come from? Personal savings, expect 30 to 50% of the investment needs to come from your resources. That doesn't mean, gee, if I'm going to $100,000, I got to have 100 grand in my bank. I have to have leverageable assets, free ability to provide that, which is where the home equity lines of credit come in. Our number one source of funds. The banks will offer, we have the Canada Small Business Finance Program, which will finance up to $350,000, and the government guarantees at 75%. Pretty nice way of reducing risk, provided it's for capital expenditures, so bricks and mortar. RRSPs, not a good strategy unless you're using it for working capital. And then these other ones, what we call love money, you really want to make sure that what goes along with that, because often when family comes along in lending, they also come along with opinions. That never happens. So, as you do your research, again, whether you use us or you do this on your own, this is what you need to do. Figure yourself out, get your spouse engaged. This is a family decision, not an individual decision. I've had clients go all the way through go to Discovery Day, come back ready to buy the franchise, and then the wife says, no, we're not doing that. They never told the wife. So you want them involved and get their support. What are your viable options? 2 to 3 options, maybe 3 to 4 options, no more. It's a lot of work investigating businesses. So you want to do it well, and you want to narrow focus, go deep, versus wide focus and do a little bit of surface. So understand the function of the owner of the business from the franchisor's perspective and the franchisee's perspective. This is what we mean test driving it. 8 to 10 existing franchisees, 1/3 top, 1/3 middle, 1/3 unhappies. Franchisors are happy to give you the top. We help you get to how to get to the unhappies. Write your business plan, not just the financial plan, folks. What is the franchisor going to do? What are you going to do? How are you going to create this business in your community? And then get your financing done. These are the things you need to do as you go through create your business. So we recommend get help. There's companies out there that do the business planning completely once you've done all the research. So there's a number of different ways to do it. Whether you use us or not, this is a different way of saying, what are your goals? Short-term, mid-term, long-term. Short-term, what is the first 2 years? How are you going to live through that sacrifice year? Mid-term, what is the 3 to 7, 10 years? What does that stride look like when you're driving that business? And long-term, what is the exit strategy? Am I going to build it and sell it? Am I going to hire a full-time manager and run it? Or am I going to pass it to my kids? What are the criteria? Number of hours, number of staff, all those different things. And then what are your needs that you have to satisfy? Once we help you do that, then we introduce typically, like I said, 3 options, and then I provide coaching on the research over that 10 to 12 week period. So those are the types of things that you look at. And so I talked about how we look at franchises before. There's got to be financial health. There's got to be good trend. They've got to have money to grow the business, and they've got to be able to have a regional or national growth capability. What you've got to do is make sure that the franchise owner validation is important, is there, because that's what tells the story. Where you might talk to 8 to 10 franchisees, we'll talk to 30 or 40. So net result for you is the franchisors we represent have these components: critical mass, market share. They are good value for the franchisee base, and that's a good value for the franchisors. Symbiotic, not parasitic. Just wrapping up, a couple of last slides. We're free. This is what most people like. We get paid by the franchisor on successful matches. Think of it as executive recruiting applied to franchising. See, there's no risk to you as going through this process other than your time. So franchisors would rather have us do our marketing. This is kind of that. It's like where I talk to lots of people, do the franchise shows and whatnot, rather than the franchisors being in market. We're able to bring them the best candidates based on what they want. So they're telling us, I want this. You're telling us, I want this. If that's not a match, we're not going to introduce you to those franchises because you're never going to be a fit anyways. So we typically, that's why we have a 92% success rate, is because we've done that matching capability. That's where the correlations come in. So it's got to be win, win, win. And as I said earlier, the first win is the customer. You're giving what the customer being the marketplace, however you want to define it. So 9 rules for, and I have a little bit of a theme here. This is one of my last slides. Ride only one horse. And I love this picture. There are actually people who do that. I took a while to find that picture. But a job, this is part-time business, a job is a full-time thoroughbred horse. A new business is the filly just out of the barn. If you try to do both and try to give all your focus, you're going to fall in between and get trampled by both. People who do that can only do it for about 100 yards. Avoid shiny things. Don't let a crow fly away with your hard-earned gold. What is a crow? A crow is anything that I think it's a good business. It's a big brand. That's that picture of all those people with their head in the sand. A crow is something that you haven't researched enough. It can be a good business, but if you haven't said, I've done my research, this is how I'm going to make successful, here's why it's the right business for you, it's still a crow. Know thyself. The most important slide. That's what I just finished saying. What are your goals? What are your skills? What are your interests? What are your capabilities? What are your must-haves? What are your must-not-haves? Couldn't find a picture for date a little, not a lot. Data little. Look at 3 or 4 franchises, not more. You look at more, you get overwhelmed. So I start on my theme now, do some dancing. As you're dating, you're dancing. You're talking to the franchisor, you're talking to the franchisees. This is the process I was just talking about. This is where that 8 to 10 people come in. Learn the business from their perspective. Can I do it? Transferable skills and abilities, plus franchisor systems, processes, training. Will I do it? My desire and motivation to drive those roles. Fall in love. Don't buy the business emotionally and justify it logically thereafter. The emotional component, the passion, roles, and activities, and the logical component should be kind of pulling each other along in research. Don't get one way ahead of the other. And then, well, okay, I really love this business. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to buy it, then figure out the cash flow model doesn't work. So head, logic, heart, passion, skills, roles, gut, intuition. Once the head and heart are there, now you bring the gut. Not, I'll know it when I see it, and you're kind of leading with your gut saying, where is it? You figure out your model, then that's your search. Meet the parents. A little bit of a theme, as I said. What is meet the parents in franchising? Meet the parents in franchising is near the end of your purchasing decision, you're going to go to what's called a discovery day. You're going to jump on a plane, you're going to meet the leadership of the company, you're going to look at the infrastructure. You're going not to say yes. You're not making a decision while you're there. You're going to make those final pieces, make sure it's there. Think of it this way. I'm going looking for reasons to say no, and if I don't find any, I don't want to find any, but I'm going in case I do find any. When I come back, I'm going to sign a contract and write a check. So that's usually within 3 to 5 days after going to Discovery Day. That's how important Discovery Day is. So what do you do between when you book your flights and you go to Discovery Day? Prenuptial review. You go to a franchise lawyer, not a regular lawyer, a franchise lawyer. Franchise lawyer will advise you of your rights. They will advise if the franchisor is following the rules. And then the last one is get married. Sign a franchise contract. It is a business marriage. It's 5 to 10 years, and then renewals. Now, I did have a lawyer, I did a presentation with this a few months back, and a lawyer saying, hey, Gary, being a lawyer, we're paid to miss stuff. You missed one. Somebody's got to fund the wedding. In other words, have your financing in place, enough to launch the business, enough for a buffer zone, enough for your personal working capital. So, I close with this thought. I was a paramedic for 5 years. I've had people die at my hands. I learned very young, in my 20s, how precious this gift called life is. If you don't love what you're doing, get the hell out. And I don't mean the roles, like there's always stuff in business, there's always going to be stuff you don't like, folks. But if it's enough of the stuff that, hey, I can live with that because I get to do all this over here, that's pretty cool. Upon the plains of hesitation lie the bleached bones of countless millions when on the dawn of victory chose to pause and rest, and while resting, withered and died. Very famous old quote by John Dreschmer. What does that mean? It means seize the day, but don't seize it recklessly or carelessly. Well, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it doesn't mean buy a business, it means make a change. If you're ready to say, hey, this is the type of business I'm looking for, then that's important. But know what's driving you and where you want to go. Okay. Thank you very much.